Let's talk about the Angler Civic. Today I watched a YouTube video in which someone, well, against, I would say, conventional wisdom, said that the Angler Civic is very good. I was a bit dumbfounded by this, so I decided to do my own math regarding it. I will get into it. It will be a lot. It's like, as you can see, 15 pages of just, well, mostly just my results of the math, but still, if you are interested in the verdict, I will probably put in a timestamp. So do with that what you will. Now then, let's go into it. First of all, I do have a couple rules, a couple things I should say first. First of all, I did some minor in-game research, but it was very minor. I checked, for example, whether the pearl divers are affected by food increase, but they are not. We'll talk about that later. But I mostly use the wiki. I will not speak about the mid-game at all. I will assume that there is the early game and the late game. The early game being you just having started the game and having no bonuses. The late game meaning you already have all text researched and you did all the usual things to just do a bit of optimization to your processes. If I made a mistake, feel free to contact me. If you want this PDF, I can give it to you. Contact me somehow and I'll get it to you. If nothing else, comment on this video. If you have any questions, happy to answer. Again, comment or, let me know. I assume that this game has no special events whatsoever. So, base game, nothing special. Everyone can get these things. I take all DLC into account. And I ignore stability as well as habitability. I assume habitability is at 100% and stability is at 50%. Well then, let's get into it. Let's talk anglers. What does anglers exactly give you? First of all, you have to pick it at the start of the game and then you cannot remove it anymore. And you need to be aquatic. The thing with aquatic is that at the moment this is meta, apparently. So, you are already going in a good direction. Now, there are no limits on agriculture districts on your ocean worlds, which means you can always get as many of your anglers or pearl divers as you want, which is very nice. And lastly, your agriculture districts cost a little less minerals, which we will get into later a tiny bit, but this is also very good. Very well. Now, you have anglers and pearl divers. Those are the two jobs that you get from the Civic. First of all, something that isn't noted in the wiki, your farmers are affected by, your anglers are affected by farmer modifiers. So, if something would give you +2 food to your farmers, it also gives you +2 food to your anglers. It is displayed in the tech, if you get it. +2 food to your anglers or farmers, but it is not noted down in the wiki, so I thought I would mention it here. Anglers give you 8 food, 2 trade value. Normal farmers just give you 6 food. And then we have pearl divers. They are affected by artisan modifiers, and artisan modifiers that increase minerals do not increase food for them, which is nice. Costs 3, they give you 3 consumer goods per month and 3 trade value. And they do only take 2 minerals. Usually your artisans take 6 minerals and give you 6 consumer goods. So you do get a 33% discount on your consumer goods here. But note, it does have a food upkeep, which will be negated by you having anglers, so make of that as you will. Something that instantly strikes you when you see a Civic that gives you an increase to food is catalytic processing. It allows you to use your food instead of your minerals to, produce your alloys. The idea here is that you can nearly entirely circumvent the use of miners and merely use your anglers and pearl divers alongside catalytic processing to keep up your economy. No more miners needed? Question mark? we'll get into it. Let's just quickly talk about catalytic processing, what's it's worth. You can see farmers deal 6 food baseline and minus 4 minerals baseline. So farmers have 50% more output than a miner. So the difference here is 2, which is 50% of what the miner gives you. And then you can see metallurgists give you 3 alloys for 6 minerals, and catalytic technicians gives you 3 alloys per 9 food. Again, 3, half of the minerals is needed more for the catalytic technicians. Something I will note real quick is within this document I often use catalytic technician and metallurgist interchangeably. Now, what we can defer from that is that equivalent jobs are needed for an equivalent alloy output. AKA, you need 1.5 basic jobs, aka miners or food workers, farmers, in order to keep up one advanced job. I did not do the math on that for the end game. However, I will assume that it stays the same. Also, here we have a cost of 1 extra civic. Catalytic processing, in this case, does not have any value by itself. It is merely the cost of taking anglers. So, we have an opportunity cost of 1 civic. This opportunity cost could be 3% output with police state or 7.2 output with pleasure seekers. But you take anglers and you take catalytic processing in order to get rid of, well, as many miners as you can and as much technicians as you can, which we'll get into shortly. Anglers and pearl divers, what exactly do they give you? Let's do just a baseline comparison. 1 angler and 1 pearl diver together give you 8 food, 5 trade value, 3 consumer goods, while using 2 food and 2 minerals. Baseline. This does not include pop upkeep. Now, in this whole math, I used the comparison of 1 job, which one could call the angling diver. Simply, you take the output and cost of those 2 jobs and halve them. So 1 job that is 50% angler and 50% pearl diver give you 3 food because of the cost of 1 food, 3 food, 2.5 trade value, 1.5 consumer goods, and they cost 1 mineral. As a baseline, for now, I will assume that 100% of the energy, of the trade value that you have is turned into energy. That may change later. I will comment on this later, but at the start of the game, this will ring true. Now, what is this angling diver job equivalent to? In the future, I will just refer to the combination of the 2 jobs. The job that I have here as angler. That is how I will handle it. Now, 1 angler is equivalent to 50% of a farmer, 3 food, 40% of a technician, 6 energy, so 3 energy, and 25% of an artisan, aka the 1.5 consumer goods. Interestingly, you get a 33% discount on your minerals, even on top of all of that. So, in total, you have a job that has a base output of 115% if you look at the baseline jobs. Something that I did not take into account is the 33% mineral discount. It will be a bit less in the end game, but it is something to keep in mind. Also, another caveat, the true food output, which I have as 3 up there, is actually 2 because of pop upkeep, but it is something that we will ignore for the purpose of this a lot. First of all, let's look at what we have so far. You have a baseline 115% job efficiency, which is very good at the beginning. Energy production can probably just be entirely delegated to the pearl divers, since you have the nice output of 2.5 per job. And at least in the early game, we will talk about the late game later. Then you have minerals. You don't need those for alloy production. That is what the food is for. And you do not need any food production. Consumer good production is probably taken care of as well, so you do not need any minerals for consumer good production. Now, let's look at the disadvantage that jumps out directly. While you did circumvent a large chunk of mineral production needed, it is not entirely circumvented. You still need to upkeep your pearl diver jobs with minerals. We'll put a pin in this. And then we have some questions that come up. Does this scale into the late game? And what about the trade value? What do we do with it? Again, put some pins in those. Now then, let's talk about the late game food and consumer goods production. Pin 3, at least, partly. First of all, I did some math, obviously. Baseline angler gives you 8 food. You get +2 from the buildings, +2 from the orbital rings. There's a 60% increase from tech, a 15% increase from the rare tech that exists, 25% increase from planetary designation, since you should probably be using that one, and a 50% increase from edicts. Whether I used edicts, I was a bit inconsistent in this math, but I believe that it will make you should be using this, at least regarding the food edict. Now then, math, 30 food, 15 food per angling diver, 15 food per angler in the late game. And regarding consumer goods, you come to 4 consumer goods per angling diver in the end game. Here I assume that the edict will be turned off, since it is probably not worth it, but you may be of a different opinion. Now, yeah, that's the math on that. Let's move on. How many alloys can one angler supply, and how many metallurgists can he supply with those with that food? We have a caveat. Since the food production bonuses are very extremely early, I will assume that the food upkeep is irrelevant. Also, the pop food upkeep is nothing to the output in the end game, so I will ignore that as well. So let's just ignore that your people have to eat. In the early game, you have an output of 3 food. So, as you know, metallurgists, 9 food means 3 alloys, so 3 food means 1 alloy. So one angler allows you to produce 1 alloy, and 3 anglers support 1 singular metallurgist. Again, as food production improvements are available fairly early, you can probably assume that to be a tiny bit higher. And in the late game, your anglers have an output of 15 food, metallurgists have an efficiency of 18 food for 8.7 alloys. I did the math behind the curtain. If you're interested in that, let me know. From that you can see that 1 angler allows the production for 7.2 alloys, and you need about 1.2 anglers to support 1 metallurgist. Let's put a look at pin 1. The consumer goods, are they taken care of? In the early game, we have this is the early game, so we have a couple different types of economies of living standards that we can give our people, and depending on that, our output will be vastly different. I am interested in how many anglers you need to, fuel 1 scientist, including his own consumer goods upkeep, how many anglers you need to supply a specialist, since that will be those will be the 2 things you want to have a lot of. You want to have as many scientists as you can support, and as many metallurgists as you can support, so the other specialists. So you probably want to be a stratified economy. I'll just say that right off the bat. With that, you'll have a 1.2 output of consumer goods. well, even if you go academic privilege with one angler, you only have a 0.875 output, which is drastically less. As you can see, while with a stratified economy, you don't even need a full angler to support a leader. You need more than one angler to support a leader or specialist with the academic privilege. And yeah, summer math, and something that is just a joke is utopian abundance. While I do like utopian abundance, I do not think for an angler build it is useful at all. Since 6 anglers for a singular scientist and 2 anglers per other pop, that's just not gonna even comment on that. Please note, the 2.1 anglers per scientist also means that you can get need 2.1 anglers in order to support a singular bureaucrat or a singular priest or entertainer. Something to keep in mind. And let's look at the end game now. Now we get a 3.7 output per month, since the consumption stays the same but the output increases. And here we have nearly multiple scientists per angler, which in the end game actually doesn't seem as bad. I expected this to be much worse. Again, you can support a couple leaders with an angler, and you can support a bunch of workers with an angler, which you will not have many workers. Let's just say it how it is. You will have leaders, and you will have specialists, and you will have anglers. So yeah. Again, academic privilege. In the end game, it is a tiny bit more viable, since, yeah, you can have quote-unquote multiple scientists with one angler. But again, it is not the best. I wouldn't go for it. Decent conditions and utopian abundance. Again, a joke. Pin 4. What do we do about the trade value? A singular angler gives you 2.5 trade value. Assuming that you have thrifty, which I would suggest you do, you get 3.125 trade value. An angler and a pearl diver do not get any technician bonuses. So getting trade value instead of energy is actually really good. However, the fact that you only get 2.5 trade value or 3 trade value per singular pop of an angler job, you really don't want to go synth ascension. That just increases the energy costs drastically, and the food that you're producing will not be eaten. You could go with no technicians, but I believe that the big bonus you are looking for here is to just completely circumvent technicians. No technician techs being researched, no technicians being employed, just anglers. This makes Psi Ascension or Bi Ascension very good, and remembering that your Bio Ascension has clone vets that eat a lot of food, 30 food per month, it may actually be a very good idea to just go Bio Ascension. Especially since that will allow you to keep your important traits and pick a couple new ones that might be very useful. As for trade value bonuses, again, I believe that no technicians might be very feasible and might actually be what you want to go for. In the early games, you also need very little energy. What do you need energy for? You maybe want to remove a couple blockers. Sure, you need like 5 energy per month, and then you are golden. So a surplus of 5 energy, that's enough. And you have some buildings that need energy, but again, 2.5 or 3 energy per month per angler, that seems enough. Now let's look at the late game technicians in regard to anglers, because here we get a bit sad, I would say. Let's look at the technicians. if you go through all the math, which, by the way, fun fact, if you go for the edict, which increases your technician's output, the subsidy, the minus 0.5 energy is subtracted from the planet itself, not from the job, not from the output. So that's very nice. With technicians in the end game, without unrepeatables, 23. 23 energy per month. Very nice. With anglers, 6.25 trade value, and if you go Fanatic Xenophile, 6.75 trade value per month. Yeah, there's a slight difference there. Also, here, I added the 50% from the Galactic Community. That is the trade resolutions. The ones that improve your trade value but make upkeep regarding consumer goods higher. And the new one, the one that reduces your naval capacity and makes the mercenaries much more valuable. That one increases trade value as well. And if you have a very low, if you go above your naval cap a lot, which you will do when you have 50, when you want the 50 trade value percent, the 50% trade value extra, you will get into a lot of energy trouble. Lately, I played a game with a mercantile, I believe. I produced a lot of energy, but still, due to the minus a bunch in the galactic, minus a bunch in the naval cap, well, let's just say I didn't have a lot of energy left over. Especially if you want to spam fleets a lot. So, 23 energy versus 6.25 trade value. One angler is now only about 27, no, not 0.27, but 27% of a technician. Reduced from the original 50%. And let me just quickly say, getting the 6.25 trade value here, that was an investment. That was an actual investment. You took the trade league and got that to the max. There's a trade league project that gives you 10% extra trade value. You took that. You took the mercantile traditions. You took the mercantile diplomatic stance. You got the building, the trade building that gives you 20% extra trade value. You took the custodian resolution, which again requires you to get a lot done. And then the big hit from the Galactic Community. Getting to the 6.25 trade value takes investment. Now the question is, you are already in a trade federation, so you could turn your 6.25 trade value into an 8th that was recently nerfed unity, a 4th consumer goods, and half energy. But honestly, you may see this differently than me, but I think you actually don't. I think you actually just keep all the energy and try to get your unity with bureaucrats. I don't think doing the conversion here is worth it. You want a lot of energy to upkeep a lot of fleet. You want a lot of fleet for the end game. And for that you need a lot of energy. And with you already not having any technicians probably, you do need every bit of energy you can get. And just to have a little comparison here, a late game merchant with the same stuff as you have here gives you 37.5 trade value, which is a big jump. Then again, you can't spam merchants as easily, but still it is a thing. Also, 10% extra trade value if the merchants are on a habitat, or 20% if they are on a ring world. On a ring world, you cannot have divers and anglers. On a ring world, they will turn into normal farmers. So don't try that. Use a ring world as a science hub. But yeah, what are you gonna do? And alert game clerks provide 13 trade value, which is just slightly more than double, but then again, clerks don't get any other bonuses besides a tiny bit of amenities, and clerks are generally considered to be the worst job in the game. So yeah. Let's look at late game scaling, just across the board. Pin 3. Anglers produce 15 food, -1 from upkeep, so 14 food. For consumer goods, 6.25 trade value, as we said earlier, and they take -2 upkeep from buildings, -2 from them being in that job, and -1 from the orbital ring. Divide all of that by 2, and you get -2.5 minerals. The food upkeep, which is noted up here, is not changed through any of the buildings, so that's very nice. So let's just quickly compare that to what you can get with the others. Technicians give you 23 energy. I will just compare them to the technicians and assume you convert all your trade value to energy, simply since I feel that is the most fair comparison. Your artisans have 13.5 consumer goods and -9 minerals, and your farmers have 25 food production. So, one angler has the value of 0.6 farmers, 0.29 artisans, and depending on how exactly you go about this, 0.27 technicians. This is with all the going into extra trade value as we did earlier. 0.29 if you go for technicians with Fanatic Xenophile. That makes up to 118%, which is a tiny bit more from the 115 that we got at the beginning. Or only 0.14 technicians if you do not invest in trade value at all. In that case, anglers may not be worth it. Yeah. Alright. And lastly, let's talk about mineral upkeep. Let's just say the strat eliminates all mineral upkeep that is not coming from the pearl divers themselves directly. In the early game, an angler has a mineral upkeep of 1, a miner has 4 mineral production, so 4 anglers can be supplied by 1 miner. You do want a tiny bit of extra minerals for buildings, but since you have the minerals cost reduction for your special for your districts, your angling districts, you don't need as many. Also, many of your minerals can just come from space. And as for the late game, anglers to take 2.5 minerals, as we said earlier. And the miner produces 19.2 minerals. So, 7... that is wrong. You can have 7.7 anglers per miner. So, that number increases massively. Still, that is with all the bells and whistles for the miners. You would need to have a fully dedicated mineral world. And the idea being that you can circumvent as much of your economy as possible, I am a tiny bit disappointed, I must say. Let's just head to the summary. With anglers and pearl divers, you get a steady 115% of the value if compared to the base jobs, quote unquote, your artisans, your farmers, or your, what are they called, technicians. It allows for a massively simplified economy since technicians will no longer be needed. However, it must be said that your energy productions of the anglers scales very slowly and very late in the game. You do need a lot of influence in especially the community, the galactic community, and there is no repeatable to increase the energy production of the pearl miners, of the anglers. You do not fully circumvent miners, although you do drastically cut down the need of miners. You do get a 33% baseline reduction on the amount of minerals you need, and you do not need anything else to take care of the consumer goods. And due to the spammability of your pearl divers, again, you probably will not need anything else but your pearl divers regarding consumer goods. However, there is a steep cost, a steep opportunity cost. You need to spec into trade value very hard. If you don't spec into trade value at all, you only have 103% relative value. So basically no extra value. And all of that comes at the cost of 2 civics. One for pearl diver, one for catalytic processing. Is that really worth it? And if you do want your bonus energy to be high, you also are forced to go into the tradition of, what's it called? Mercantile. And if you don't have any federation you can join, you're also forced to go into federations, into diplomacy. Although I would say many would maybe want to do that either way, but still, it is a opportunity cost. You could take something like expansion early, like prosperity early. All of that might be more powerful in the early game than needing to go mercantile to boost your energy output, needing to go diplomacy in order to get a federation going. Also, since the output of your consumer goods is not necessarily what one might call the best, going stratified economy is very important. You do want to use your consumer goods very wisely. And if you want to have a lot of scientists and a lot of bureaucrats, which I suggest you would want, then you really need the stratified economy, as having half upkeep on your specialists is very important, especially in the early game. Which means authoritarian is important, and since Xenophile boosts your trade value, and you really want a higher trade value for the higher job value, I would say Fanatic Xenophile Authoritarian is probably the only thing that you can really use for it. And regarding the fact that you have very little energy production, relatively speaking, going over your naval cap may be difficult. At least going over your naval cap significantly, which you probably will be forced to do if you go down the trade value route and reduce your naval cap by picking some resolutions in the Galactic Senate. That is what I have in math, and I must say, I am a bit surprised. I always assumed that Anglers was much worse than it seems here, but it is still very bad. The thing that you are getting for, remember, 2 civics and 1 tradition and maybe even a second tradition, depending on your circumstances. So let's say 2 civics, 2 traditions. What you get is a job that gives you 115% value. So 15% more value than the baseline jobs that you could get. And honestly, I might rather just go technocracy and get some really good scientists or artificers, plus 1 consumer good and some extra building slots. You do not get any special extra building slots from pearl divers and anglers. I don't think that the whole angler thing is that good, sadly. I want it to be good. I genuinely do, but I don't think it is. then again, my math here was just on one civic. Maybe if I look at some other civics and do some math there, I might find that Anglers is good. But again, 2 civics, 15% extra output. Thank you very much, but I believe that is a no from me.